Okay, good morning. This past Pesach fell on Thursday, Friday, Shabbos, which meant that in Chutz La'aretz we had the Yom Tov on Friday, and so we had to make an Eiruv Tavshilin. Anytime Yom Tov falls on Friday, you have to make an Eiruv Tavshilin. So, someone who lives here in the neighborhood did not make an Eiruv Tavshilin, and the reason he didn't make an Eiruv Tavshilin was because he was eating out all the meals at his mother-in-law's home. So what did he make an Eiruv Tavshilin for? But then, on Friday afternoon, he decided that actually he was going to go home for Shabbos and have Friday night meal at home. And so the question became, so now he didn't make an Eiruv Tavshilin, so what does he do? What can he do? What can't he do? And hopefully by the end of the class today, we'll know the answer to that question, which involves actually a number of points that have to be addressed. So what I would like to do is go through, first of all, to go through a piece of the Gemara. The Gemara is in Be'ed, after Tzvavam base, introducing the concept of Eiruv Tavshilin, and then go through the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch Siman Tov Kuf Chav Zayin, which is the chapter the primary chapter that discusses Eiruv Tavshilin. There's also a little bit in Tov Kuf Gimel, which we'll touch upon, and sort of go through the points that Alter Rebbe makes, and as we go along to point out some things, and then hopefully with the time remaining at the end, to go through some additional details. Again, a lot of practically relevant stuff. So the Gemara, the Mishnah says, it's the first Mishnah of the second Perek of Be'er, introduces the din that Yom Tov Shechali is Be'er of Shabbos, a Yom Tov that falls on Friday. You're not allowed to cook anything on Yom Tov for Shabbos. Now this is a rabbinic enactment. It's not a mitzvah deraisa. It's a rabbinic enactment that you have to make an Eiruv Tavshilin. And then the Gemara says, what's the biblical source for the mitzvah of Eiruv Tavshilin? Now, as I just said, it's a rabbinic commandment. So when we say Minah Namili, we don't literally mean what is the biblical source for this, but it's something called an asmachta, which means that often Chazal will look for a scriptural reference, if you will, to underpin a rabbinic concept. And there could be various reasons of why Chazal do it, but we're going to connect this rabbinic mitzvah, this rabbinic institution, we're going to anchor it, so to speak, into a pasuk. So what's the relevant pasuk? The Amakra Zachar Yom HaShabbos L'Kadshay, remember the Shabbos day to keep it holy.
Oh yeah.
Thank you. Zachrehu Me'achar Shabo L'Hashkichei. Remember it when you are most likely to forget it. Amar Rava, and Rava explained, my time, what's the reason? Amar Rava, Kadesha Yiva Mona Yafa L'Shabbos Mona Yafa L'Yom Tov. So Rava says, what's the reason for Eiruv Tavshilin? And this reason for Eiruv Tavshilin that Rava is about to provide also explains the connection between Eiruv Tavshilin and the pasuk, remember the Shabbos day to keep it holy. And that is that because you're all busy celebrating Yom Tov on Friday, you are likely to forget about Shabbos. And you'll forget to make plans for Shabbos, you'll forget to prepare food for Shabbos, because usually, what's Friday all about? Friday is all about preparing for Shabbos. But if Friday is Yom Tov, and Friday is about celebrating today as a Yom Tov with meals and festivity, etc., so then you are likely it's possible or likely for Shabbos to sort of get dropped by the wayside. And so we tell you, make an Eiruv Tavshilin. What's the idea of Eiruv Tavshilin? That you've already started cooking for Shabbos before Yom Tov. It's already on your conscious mind that I have to, I'm putting this dish away. In practice, we usually use a challah or matzah and an egg, which we'll get to. But so you've already designated something for food for Shabbos. So you're already in the middle of the project, so to speak, of preparing for Shabbos. And so once you're already in the middle of the project, you're less likely to forget about it and to completely to think. And that's what it means. Remember the Shabbos day, that on such a time when Friday is preoccupied with celebrating Yom Tov, you're destined to forget Shabbos. So go and actively remember Shabbos by creating an Eiruv Tavshilin. Now, then the Gemara continues that actually there's also another reason for Eiruv Tavshilin. Rav Ashi Amar, Kadesha Yom Ro'in Oivim Miyom Tov L'Shabbos Kal V'Choyim Miyom Tov L'Chol. Rav Ashi says that the reason for the in takana of Eiruv Tavshilin is to remind you that you're not usually allowed to cook from Yom Tov to the next day. Now a few weeks ago, I think before Pesach, we had a class about baking and cooking on Yom Tov, not nothing to do with Shabbos, when Yom Tov falls in the middle of the week. So here the concern is like this. Rashi is saying, if Yom Tov is on Tuesday, you're not allowed to cook for Wednesday. You're only allowed to do things on Yom Tov for that day. When Yom Tov falls on Friday, because you're not allowed to cook on Shabbos, so on a biblical level it would be permissible to cook for Shabbos. But our concern is that you may, if we allow you to cook on Friday for the purpose of Shabbos, then you may next time when Yom Tov falls on Tuesday, start cooking on Tuesday for the purpose of Wednesday. So therefore, we're concerned that in the future you're going to come to violate Yom Tov. So therefore, we institute the Eiruv Tavshilin, and we say, no, you're not allowed to cook on Yom Tov for the following day. But if you have an Eiruv Tavshilin, that means you're already in the middle of cooking for Shabbos. So then you're allowed to continue. But next time when Yom Tov falls on Tuesday, you'll know that you're not allowed to cook for Wednesday because you don't have an Eiruv Tavshilin, obviously because it's not Friday. So that's the reason of Rav Ashi for the Eiruv Tavshilin. And then the Gemara later on, after a few lines, brings actually another pasuk in the Parshas B'Shalach that serves as a basis for the mitzvah of Eiruv Tavshilin, and that is that you shall bake that which you bake and you should cook that which you cook. But the Gemara understands it to mean that you should bake because of something that you've already baked, in other words, the bread part of the Eiruv Tavshilin, and you should cook something because of something that you've already cooked, namely the cook part of the Eiruv Tavshilin. And it doesn't say this explicitly in the Gemara, however, some Achronim point out that these two scriptural sources actually correspond parallel to the two reasons for Eiruv Tavshilin. The reason, according to Rava, is that we want to ensure that we want to protect the kavod of Shabbos, that you're not going to forget to prepare proper food for Shabbos, and that's anchored in the pasuk, remember the Shabbos day to keep it holy. And then Rav Ashi's concern is more about future Yom Tovim, that in the future Yom Tovim you shouldn't violate them by preparing for the next day, and that's anchored in this pasuk, only cook if you've already started cooking, only bake if you've already started baking, but on a regular Yom Tov that falls on Tuesday where you don't have that, then you would not...
Which pasuk?
Okay. Now, the Gemara doesn't explicitly say any practical difference between Rava and Rav Ashi, and therefore also doesn't say who we paskin like. There are a number of practical differences between the two. First of all, before practical difference, I'm just going to say a very important conceptual point. The halacha is that if a person didn't make an Eiruv Tavshilin, then he's not allowed to cook for Shabbos. Yeah. Now we'll discuss. Hopefully, we'll have some time to discuss. Well, practically, what to do if you didn't make an Eiruv Tavshilin. But that's the halacha. If you didn't cook for Shabbos, if you didn't make an Eiruv Tavshilin, you're not allowed to cook for Shabbos. So why? Why are you not allowed to cook for Shabbos? What does it help you to not cook for Shabbos? What are you accomplishing by not cooking anything for Shabbos if you didn't make an Eiruv Tavshilin?
It's a desire to Yom Tov. Well, yeah.
You're onto something.
Okay,
Think about the two reasons that we just gave.
Well, one would be that if you did it for Shabbos, so then you might come the next time and do it for, let's say, the next time is Yom Tov, or you might do it.
So in other words, if somebody doesn't make an Eiruv Tavshilin, so now we're going to tell him don't cook for Shabbos, and he's going to go hungry on Shabbos. We'll see soon what the practical solutions are, but at least in theory, he's going to be hungry on Shabbos. But what we've accomplished is that next time when Yom Tov falls on Tuesday, he's going to keep Yom Tov properly, and he's not going to start cooking on Tuesday for Wednesday. So there's it's a consequence. In order to allow you to cook for Shabbos, we could only do that if we safeguard future Yom Tovim, and you don't cook on Yom Tov for the next day. But if you go with the reason of Rava, that the reason is that we want to make sure that you're going to honor Shabbos properly, so what have you accomplished by not allowing him to cook if he doesn't have an Eiruv? You've just ensured that he's not going to honor Shabbos properly. But according to Rava, the pshat is that it's a knas. We want to make sure, in other words, you didn't do what we told you to do, so we're going to give you a punishment. We're going to give you a fine until you don't cook for Shabbos. And next time you'll make sure to do what we tell you to do. Right? Like, for example, just another... someone, it's not relevant to Shavuos, but on Sukkot and Pesach, yeah? So you're not allowed to cut your nails on Chol Hamoed. Why are you not allowed to cut your nails on Chol Hamoed? Because we want to make sure that you're going to cut your nails before Yom Tov, and you'll come into Yom Tov looking dignified, right? So if somebody forgot to cut his nails before Yom Tov, and he comes to you on Chol Hamoed, can I cut my nails? No. Now it's going to be even worse, because now you're going to come into the last day's Yom Tov with extra long nails. It's too bad. We're giving you a fine. You didn't do what we told you to do to cut your nails before Yom Tov. Now we're going to give you a fine and not let you cut your nails. And so next time Yom Tov comes around, you'll jolly well remember that you should cut your nails before Yom Tov. So according to Rava, it's the same type of idea with Eiruv Tavshilin. You're not actually accomplishing anything by not allowing him to cook for Shabbos without the Erev Tavshilin, but you've just sort of reinforced that you got to take what we tell you to do seriously, and if you don't listen, we're going to fine you. Okay.
Just one minute. What's the other opinion? The first opinion that we learned, that it's something to do with covered Shabbos. I'm not really sure how that works.
Because you're likely to get carried away with celebrating Yom Tov, there's a likelihood that you'll forget about Shabbos, to make sure to leave enough food for Shabbos, to take care of all your tzrachim for Shabbos. And so by making an Erev Tavshilin, you're already, so to speak, in the middle of the project of preparing for Shabbos.
Which is done Eiruv before even Yom Tov.
Yeah, but you're already in the middle of the project, so you're less likely to forget.
Okay.
Now, even though I've said, of course, that Erev Tavshilin is a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, we see here there's two asmachtas in the pasuk, and there's also, it's interesting to note that the Gemara in Yuma, where it says that Avraham Avinu kept the whole Torah before it was given, so the example the Gemara says is even Erev Tavshilin. So there's clearly something about Erev Tavshilin which is very fundamental, and it's interesting that for us in Chutz La'aretz it's also much more common than it is in Eretz Yisrael, because anytime Yom Tov is Thursday, Friday, Shabbos. For example, when the Tishrei Yom Tovim fall on Thursday, Friday, Shabbos, we're only going to make an Erev Tavshilin. We're going to make it 3 times, and as Yisrael they only do it once for Rosh Hashanah. But Sukkot and Sukkot Torah, we don't make an Erev Tavshilin.
But it shows that he kept also rabbinical laws.
Exactly. Yeah, even mitzvah Rabbanon. Now, talking of the 3-day Yom Tov, when Rosh Hashanah falls on Thursday, Friday, Shabbos, so in Chutz La'aretz we have 3 Eiruv Tavshilins within the span of 3 weeks. Right, well, 4 weeks technically, and it can get a little bit stressful. There's so much going on, and it's Erev Yom Tov, and you're preparing your lulav, and you're preparing your sukkah, and you're scared you're going to forget about Erev Tavshilin. So the question is, can you make an Erev Tavshilin before Rosh Hashanah, and then not eat it, just keep it there safe, and just leave it for Rosh Hashanah, for Sukkot, for Simchas Torah, and like this, you've gotten rid of this stress. Like, oh no, what if I forget Erev Tavshilin? So
keep it in your refrigerator, you mean?
Yeah, just keep it. You have a bread that has a shelf life of a few weeks, and you have Well, even now we're making Erev Tavshilin Shavuos. What if you still have your Erev Tavshilin left from Pesach? Does it count? So the Paskim say that the Rabbi explains that this depends on Rava and Rav Ashi, depending on which reason you go with. If you go with Rav Ashi, that we want to make sure that you're going to remember that you have some sort of hecker that you're not just allowed to cook on Yom Tov for the next day. So then it doesn't matter if I made it yesterday or a month ago. But if the vart is to prepare for Shabbos actively, I need to be in the middle of preparing for Shabbos, so then it has to be made on Erev Yom Tov. And L'chatchila, as you know, L'chatchila we paskin that you have to do it on Erev Shabbos, which means that indeed in a year that Rosh Hashanah is on a Thursday, we do in fact make an Erev Tavshilin each time separately with its own bracha, etc. Now, if you did leave over your Erev Tavshilin, then you get into this problem of you can't say a bracha because according to Rav Ashi it's good enough, so you have to make sure to eat your Erev Tavshilin. And in general, there's also the minhag which Alter Rebbe brings that at least the bread part of the Erev Tavshilin should be used as part of the Lechem Mishnah on Shabbos. You could it's even brought that you should use it. In other words, every Lechem Mishnah you have 2 breads, so you use it as the second loaf on the Friday night, and then you don't open it, and you use it again on Shabbos day, and then if you wash for Shalosh Shudas, you use it again for Shalosh Shudas. And the idea is, once you've done one mitzvah with it, to do as many mitzvahs as possible with it, which is interesting because, as we'll see soon, really the main part of the Erev Tavshilin is the cooked dish, which is commonly an egg or something like that. But we don't find that there's a specific mitzvah to eat the egg or minhag, whatever. Whatever. On the Maisa, we do usually eat it, but on Pesach, you put the egg in the cholent, and okay, shine.
As became a Sephardi.
Oy. All right. So
no kidneys, just the egg of the shom.
Now, all right. Now let's go through. So Adkan is the sort of the fundamentals of the sugya. There are a number of other practical differences between Rava and Rav Ashi, which hopefully we'll touch upon as we go along. So first of all, as we discussed a few weeks ago in the Yom Tov Shir, based on the halachas and Tov Kuf Gimel in section 503 of Shulchan Aruch, Rechaim, the bottom line is like this. Number one, in general, whenever a person would do something, any type of preparation, a malacha, on a day of Yom Tov for the following day, whether the following day is a weekday, the following day is a Yom Tov, doesn't make a difference. So, if there is a theoretical possibility of using it today, so then it's not forbidden on a biblical level.
Even far-fetched.
Even if it's very far-fetched. So, for example, if a person were to cook a huge dinner on Yom Tov for the sake of his camping trip that he's going on tomorrow, right? If he does it at the end of the day, where by the time the food is ready, Yom Tov is going to be over, so there isn't even the theoretical possibility of using the food on Yom Tov, then he has violated a biblical commandment. A biblical prohibition of cooking on Yom Tov for the next day. But if he does it earlier on in the day, even though he has absolutely zero intention of using it on Yom Tov, because there's the theoretical possibility that he'll be suddenly crashed by a whole group of guests, and he'll need to serve them loads of food, and he'll have food for them, because there is that theoretical possibility, therefore it's not a biblical violation, it's only a rabbinic violation. Now, why is it important for us to know what is a rabbinic violation and what is a rabbinic violation? It's all equally forbidden. So the main reason is because Eiruv Tavshilin is only, so to speak, the antidote, only counteracts the rabbinic prohibition. If something is biblically forbidden, you're not allowed to do it on Yom Tov for Shabbos, even with an Eiruv Tavshilin. So, in other words, what this means in practice is that when you're cooking food on Friday for Shabbos, that's on Yom Tov, you could only do it if you're making sure that the food is fully cooked before Shabbos. So, whereas on a regular Friday, you might put your cholent up on Friday afternoon, and it cooks overnight. And as long as you have a blech or some sort of thing like that, in between the sheet of metal and the crock pot, whatever it is, that's fine. You can't do that on Yom Tov that falls on Friday. On Yom Tov that falls on Friday, you have to put up your cholent early in the morning, or whatever, depending on the size of your flame, or whatever it is. But you have to put it up early enough that the cholent should be fully cooked and edible with enough time to eat it on Yom Tov, and that downgrades it from a biblical prohibition to a rabbinic prohibition, and then you have the Eiruv Tavshilin kicks in and says, okay, you're allowed to do this because tomorrow is Shabbos. Yes?
If you have a crock pot that runs on electric,
Yes.
then you don't have as much of a problem as if you have a pot that's on gas.
Even if it's on electric, you still need, you can't leave the cholent in the crock pot without some sort of hecker, like a sheet of silver or something, unless the cholent is fully cooked before Shabbos. It's nothing to do with Yom Tov and a regular Shabbos. In order to be able to leave something on a source of heat over Shabbos, you either have to have a covering over the source of heat, like a sheet of foil, or it needs to be fully cooked before Shabbos. Okay, well, we've discussed that in the past. Yeah. But that's, I don't want to get confused. That's nothing to do with Yom Tov. I don't want to confuse too much. Okay.
So is it like a secular an analogy to, we're taking something down from a rabbinic, from a biblical to a rabbinic? Is that like going from like a felony to a misdemeanor?
You lose the whipping.
Not really, because the Torah tells us that you have to listen to the rabbi. So it also remains on that level. There's no. In other words, from one perspective, there's no difference. They're both equally prohibited. It's just that the rabbis who instituted it, they themselves chose different parameters for certain things of how to implement it.
But they wouldn't be able to do dispensations for biblical law. That wouldn't make any sense, right?
Of course not.
Here's an exception, but we made the rules, so we can make the exceptions.
So which rabbi are you holding by then?
Of Rav and Rav Ashi? Yeah. Of the two that I mentioned? Yeah, so I think I might have mentioned. It seems that there's a sikh of the Rebbe about it, but I think that I heard him discuss it. I believe the bottom line is that we do both. In other words, whenever there's an nafkamina, at least lachatchila, we try to go with both opinions. And you'll see soon, hopefully we'll see soon some practical relevance to it. Okay. Now, another very important rule is that Eiruv Tavshilin. Okay, two more things. First of all, Eiruv Tavshilin is not just for cooking, it's any preparation, even any preparation for Shabbos to Yom Tov, from Yom Tov to Yom Tov, is forbidden. For example, there's nothing forbidden per se about setting a table. You could anytime start putting down a tablecloth and plates and things. But on a regular Yom Tov, you're not allowed, let's say a 2-day Yom Tov that falls on Tuesday and Wednesday, if you want, you can't set the table for Wednesday night until it's night. You can't go on Tuesday afternoon and set the table for the second night Yom Tov, because it's not a malacha, it's not a forbidden form of activity, but you're preparing on day one of Yom Tov, day two on Yom Tov, and that's not allowed. Eiruv Tavshilin would include that type of activity also, that once you have an Eiruv Tavshilin, you are allowed to do that. However, and this is the next point, the major caveat, which Alter Rebbe emphasizes in a number of places, that Eiruv Tavshilin only works for food or meal related activity. So you're allowed to set the table, you're allowed to wash the dishes, anything that's helping you dine on Shabbos is included in the mechanism, so to speak, of Eiruv Tavshilin. But other forms of preparation, for example, the example Alter Rebbe gives is rolling the Sefer Torah to prepare it for the next day's Kriya, that would be forbidden even if you do have an Eiruv Tavshilin, and similarly other things like that. For example, if you don't use the Eiruv, so you're not allowed to carry on Yom Tov for the next day. So if you're carrying food, in other words, if you don't use the Eiruv on a regular Shabbos, so then on Yom Tov, why are you allowed carrying on Yom Tov? Not because of the Eiruv, you're carrying because you're allowed to carry on Yom Tov. But then it remains with the parameters of carrying on Yom Tov, which is you're allowed to carry for today, or in the case of Yom Tov that falls on Friday, so you could carry food for the next day. But if you're going on Friday afternoon to visit your friend and you want to have a book to read over there, you can't, obviously if you plan to read the book today, that's fine. But if you're only going to be reading the book on Shabbos, then you can't carry it on Friday for the purpose of Shabbos, because that's not on the food-related activity, and therefore the Eiruv doesn't help.
So
I
you
should
have
add...
to drop it off before.
Right. I should add that other poskim, based I believe primarily on Rabbi Kiva Eger, are lenient, and they at least b'shas Chag would rely that Eiruv Tavshilin kicks in even for non-food related preparation. However, so in non-Chabad poskim often evoke that opinion, but in the Alter Rebbe it's clear in a number of places that he doesn't accept that, and he says only food-related preparations.
So Akiva Eger is the one that's matir in those cases?
If I recall correctly.
Is there a bracha that says that we're having an Arab Tavshilin?
Yes, we're going to talk all about that. You know what? If you don't mind, in the meantime, to pass me an annotated siddur, I'd appreciate it.
The blue one.
Okay. So first, Alter Rebbe. Now I'm moving to Tov Kuf Chav Zayin, section 527 in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. Thank you, David. And just going to go through the parts that I feel are the most relevant. So the Alter Rebbe starts off in Sif Aleph by introducing the concept of Eiruv Tavshilin, which we've already done. Then in Sif Beis he brings the two reasons and says the difference between the two reasons, that meaning that according to Rav Ashi you could make the Eiruv Tavshilin weeks in advance, according to Rava you cannot. Okay, then he says, okay, how do you actually make an Eiruv Tavshilin? So first of all, we take a baked item and a cooked item. Now here perhaps is a good time to mention another nafkamina, another difference between the opinion of Rava and Rav Ashi. What if a person has no intention whatsoever of doing any preparation on Yom Tov for Shabbos? Now, in practice, that's kind of theoretical. In other words, everybody's planning to do something, because first of all, you have to, even if you're not cooking and baking, you might be warming up food, right? In other words, right? Okay, but you might not be warming up food. Let's say you're eating your meals out, right? You need to light candles. Lighting candles you're lighting candles on Yom Tov for this Friday night meal. And even if you're not planning to light candles, you're probably going to be doing other preparations that are not malacha, just preparing household errands that you need to carry your food, whatever it is. So it's rare that somebody should actually not be planning to do any malacha whatsoever for any preparation on Friday for Shabbos. But at least in theory, there is this shiloh: what do you do if you're not planning to do? And in other words, like this, the question is like this: We'll see soon that the responsibility of Eiruv Tavshilin is on each household. So each individual household is responsible to make an Eiruv Tavshilin. So does that mean that every household has a positive obligation make an Eiruv Tavshilin regardless of your plans for Shabbos and Yom Tov? Or is it, if you're planning to do things, then you have to do an Eiruv Tavshilin? Now, some suggest that it depends the reason for Eiruv Tavshilin. If you say the reason for Eiruv Tavshilin is like Rav Ashi, that if we allow you to prepare on Yom Tov for Shabbos, so then you might end up next time when Yom Tov is on Tuesday preparing for Wednesday, so then you say, okay, good, I'm not planning to do anything, so I don't need it. But if the purpose is to make sure you don't forget about Shabbos, then it doesn't matter if you're not planning to do anything. There's still the chance that you might get too engrossed in celebrating Friday as Yom Tov and forget to leave over food for Shabbos or whatever it is, make plans for Shabbos or do things for Shabbos. There's still this chance that you might get too swept up in the Friday celebrations and forget about the Shabbos celebrations. So in practice, the accepted psak is like this: is that first of all, the accepted psak is that if you're not planning to do anything for Shabbos, again, it's not so common to actually be that way, but if you're not planning to do anything for Shabbos, that you should make an Eiruv Tavshilin without you should make an Eiruv Tavshilin without a bracha, and we'll see soon what that means. But B, an even better idea is to change your mind, meaning you can go out of your way, and let's say if you have a kettle or whatever it is, to let's say heat up some water on Friday to be able to have a tea on Friday night. And that way, now you for sure need the Eiruv Tavshilin. In other words,
Do it for sure. Like
do it in a way that you actually do need the Eiruv Tavshilin. So that's sometimes a bit of a better solution. Now, L'maisa, we all know that we take, what do we take for the Eiruv Tavshilin? A cooked item and a baked item. Why do you take a cooked item and a baked item? We saw in the Gemara, because you could cook once you, you could cook when you have a cooked item, you could bake when you have a baked item. Now, nowadays, virtually nobody, like we discussed in the previous class on this topic, virtually nobody bakes on Yom Tov for Shabbos. We cook, we warm food up, but it's rare that people should be baking cakes or challah, whatever it is, on Yom Tov for Shabbos. And yet, we still take a piece of bread for the Eiruv Tavshilin. So, that's kind of indicative of the fact that we're kind of leaning towards saying that Eiruv Tavshilin is an objective mitzvah, regardless of what your plans are. You should make an Eiruv Tavshilin, because this is an institution of the Chachamim, a takana, that every household should make an Eiruv Tavshilin. And everybody follow what I just said? Okay. Now, then the Sif Gimel Alter Rebbe goes into Ketzah Mitzvahs Eiruv Tavshilin, and here I'm going to explain to you something really important from the Siddur, and actually I think it would be beneficial if everybody follows along in the Siddur. So if you open the annotated Siddur to page 327. So I'm going to, there's three paragraphs, if you look in the Eiruv Tavshilin section over here, there's three paragraphs. I'm going to skip the first paragraph for now, we'll get back to it in a moment. The second paragraph is the bracha. Baruch atah Hashem, blessed are you God, who sanctified with his commandments, v'tzivanu al mitzvahs Eiruv, right? That is the bracha. So if you ever ask a rabbi, he tells you make an Eiruv Tavshilin without a bracha, he means omit that line. Then you have the B'deinya Hishara. B'deinya Hishara is a paragraph in Aramaic, which is a declaration, which says that through this making Eiruv Tavshilin, we should be, you could look in English, you'll see, it should be permissible for us to bake, to cook, to not put away is the wrong word over here, it's not a very good translation. Put away means to insulate, yeah, I should actually email the guy.
You know the guy?
Yeah, email him all the time. To insulate, and to insulate, to put away a dish to preserve its heat. Okay, fine, to insulate, right? To kindle a light, to light a candle, right? And to prepare and do all the festival needs for Shabbos, da-da-da. Okay, now, really, really important. This last paragraph is not a prayer. It's a declaration. It's kind of sort of a legal declaration that is only of any use if you understand what you're saying. And so that's the reason why it was originally written in Aramaic, because back in the day that was the language that most Jews understood best. When you're saying it, if you don't understand Aramaic, say it in English. It's not a prayer, and when you talk about prayer, there's value, there's two sides of the coin. On the one hand, it's valuable to understand what you're saying. On the other hand, there's value to use the language which Chazal instituted. But when it comes to this type of thing, actually, it's the time of the Omer now, we should also mention that it's important. If you don't understand the Hebrew, you should say it in English. Today is X amount of days and weeks to the Omer. Now, usually, if you're counting the Omer and Shul, you know what you're saying, because the rabbi announced yesterday is whatever it is, so you know what you're saying. So even though you don't know exactly which word means which, maybe it's not the end of the world, but it's not a mitzvah of praying, it's a mitzvah of counting. It means counting
should be the same.
Yes, Bir Chametz is the same. We've discussed that in the past. The declaration that you make to nullify the Chametz, say it in a language I understand, and here also, B'deinya Hishar. Now here's really, really important. In addition to understanding what you're saying, B'deinya Hishara is not a bracha. B'deinya Hishara, this paragraph, is a fundamental aspect of making the Eiruv Tavshilin. And therefore, if a rabbi ever tells you make an Eiruv Tavshilin without a bracha, you must still say this paragraph of B'deinya Hishara. It just means the bracha, Baruch atah Hashem, you don't say. But B'deinya Hishara is an integral part of the mitzvah of Eiruv Tavshilin.
Why would you make it without a bracha?
There are certain cases, like I mentioned before, if a person's not planning to do anything, and there's other cases which we may or may not have time to touch.
So if you're making a bracha but you're not planning on doing anything, isn't that bracha v'tola?
So again, that depends. It could be that according to Rav, you have to make one even if you're not planning to do anything.
Right.
And therefore would say make an Eiruv without a bracha to be choshesh to the opinion of Rav Ashi. So that's one of the occasions where you might be getting into that type of idea. Now, Okay, we can put the Siddur aside for now. We're going to get back to this in a moment. Okay, then Sif Zayin is all about you have to include other things that you're planning to do on Yom Tov within the Yeshara text, which is not usually so relevant. In practice, Sif Ches is about that you have to do it. You have to do Eiruv Tavshilin early. You have to cook the food early so that it should be fully ready before Shabbos. And the Alter Rebbe actually adds that, and he says this is why there's the practice that when Yom Tov falls on Friday night, everybody davens early. Now today, at least in Chabad, that's not the practice. We don't daven early on Friday night. But why was that the practice? Because people didn't know that you have to make all the food ready early. So, but like this, if they know that, it's already Shabbos, we're davening Ma'ariv early tonight. So then that will remind everybody to actually make sure, that will ensure that everybody's going to make the Erev Tavshilin. Okay, Sif Tes and Yud is if you forget to make the Erev Tavshilin last minute, when you could tell what's the latest time you could do it till, we'll leave that. Sif Yud Aleph is which type of foods you could use. Now it's interesting. La halacha, we pass that any type of cooked dish is good enough, and in practice we actually use the egg. In the Alter Rebbe's Siddur, which is usually more the way we actually practice it, the Alter Rebbe says to use a tavshil chashuv, a more prominent, like a piece of fish or meat or something, but for some reason in practice that's not what we do. We just use a hard-boiled egg.
Well, you could do it.
Sorry?
You could do it.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. Now we come to the concept of Gadol Ha'ir. Gadol Ha'ir would let's loosely translate as the rabbi. So the rabbi is going to make an Erev Tavshilin on everybody's behalf, and the point is that if somebody forgot to make an Erev Tavshilin, so then, and Timothy, this is touching on what you're talking about, if somebody forgot to make an Erev Tavshilin, then he should be allowed to cook because the rabbi included him in his Eiruv. Now here, please everybody pay close attention, because even though they say that if ignorance were bliss, there would be many more happy people, but in this case, actually, ignorance is bliss, and that is, and you'll see in a moment what I mean. But first, let's understand how this concept works. Now, for some reason, I don't know why, I've looked a little bit around, I still haven't found any reason why. The way it is in the Alter Rebbe Siddur is such that not only does the rabbi make it on everybody's behalf, but everybody makes it on everybody's behalf. And that's, if you open back your Siddur to page 327, you'll see that was the first paragraph that I skipped, that you declare that you hereby grant a share in this Eiruv to anyone who wishes to participate and depend on it. Right? Now, how does that work? So you're supposed to give it to somebody else to acquire it on behalf of other people. So without getting into too much detail, because we're limited on time, and I want to have time to cover other things about Erev Tavshilin, but in briefly, there is a Choshen Mishpat Dika principle. There is a legal principle in halacha that any individual can serve as an agent to do a favor for somebody, even if that person did not appoint him as his agent. So, I'm going to call Reuven Wasserman and say, nobody has appointed you as their agent, but you are going to spontaneously assume the status as being the agent of all the other Jews in Chicago to acquire this piece of matzah and egg on their behalf, to acquire a share of this piece of matzah and egg on their behalf. So I'm making the Eiruv, but before I make the Eiruv, I give it to you, representing the whole the Jews of Chicago. Then you lift it up, and now by lifting it up, that's your act of acquisition. And then you give it back to me, and I make the Eiruv. And indeed, if you look in the Eiruv in the B'denya Yeshara text, in the end of the third paragraph, it says, "And for all the Jews who dwell in this city." Right? Mm-hmm. Now, again, this is an idea which I have no idea why everybody is doing it. It's the halacha is that the Gadol Ha'ir, again, Lucy will translate that as the rabbi does it. And if you look, for example, in the art scroll, the other Siddurim, you'll see it says, if you're the rabbi, you add this, right? But most people don't do that part. Again, for some reason in Chabad, everybody does it. That's just what it means. Now, ideally,
saying the words or that
the whole kinyan, the whole
so
kinyan. You do that? You don't do that?
No, I never have heard him say anything like that. So you've handed somebody the
right. So who's the somebody? So the Chatchila, it's supposed to be somebody who's not Samuch al Shulchan, who's not your immediate dependent. So it's not supposed to be your wife or whatever it is. It should be somebody else. However, but the Eved, it can be your wife, whatever it is, and that's why I think most people do that. You don't go and start calling a neighbor and they, your wife come, or somebody, or your adult child. Now, it is supposed to be somebody else, and I personally do use somebody else. I'll always call a neighbor, whatever it is, and the reason I do that is because for me, there is actually some likelihood that somebody might be in a situation where he comes to me, I forgot to make an Erev Tavshilin, and as we'll see soon, the various conditions are met, the criteria are met, I may tell him to rely on my Eiruv. And if he's relying on my Eiruv, I want to make sure it's done in the best possible way, so I will actually call out somebody who's not from my household, do you mind to come in for a moment and do this? But if everybody else is doing it, you're just doing it the Rav Milsa, it's unclear to me exactly why, and it's clear that your wife or your adult child is good enough. It's not ideal, but it's good enough, and so that's the first line. That's how the kinyan works. Now, however, and here's why the ignorance is. If you're ignorant and you don't know anything about Erev Tavshilin, you don't know that really it's responsibility to do it yourself, no problem. You rely on the rabbi, you're good to go. And in fact, later the Alter Rebbe says, it's not very PC, but he brings that the custom is that the rabbi, he makes the Erev Tavshilin automatically for all the widows and ignoramuses in the city. So the widows and the ignoramuses, they're doing well. They're well off. But now that you've come to today's class and you know that you have a responsibility to make an Erev Tavshilin, now you're in trouble. Now you're not ignorant, and therefore you're not bliss. And now, if you forget to make an Erev Tavshilin, not necessarily can you rely on the rabbi. You could only rely on the rabbi if it was a real.
Unless he slept.
If there were real pressing circumstances. But if it was just, the Alter Rebbe says it's either your laziness caused you to forget, or in general you're just not so concerned, you don't have a strong concern for doing mitzvahs properly, and therefore it wasn't high on your priority list, so then you're not allowed to rely on the rabbi. Now, this is a little bit of a great, like, where do you draw the line? Like, I was sincerely tied up with all the rush of Erev Yom Tov preparation, so how do you draw the line? There's actually, Rabbi Marlow was the Rav in Crown Heights, so there was one year in the 80s where Rosh Hashanah was an Erev Tavshilin Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah fell on Thursday, and as usual, the Rebbe held the Farbrengen on the night before Erev Rosh Hashanah in connection with the birthday of the Tzemach Tzedek. Anyway, so there was one individual that year who forgot to make an Erev Tavshilin, and he came on Yom to Rabbi Marlow, and he said, "Can I rely on your Erev Tavshilin? I forgot to make one." So Rabbi Marlow said, "Absolutely not. You were at the Farbrengen, and the Rebbe reminded everybody to make an Erev Tavshilin. If you forgot and you sort of procrastinated and delayed it, that's not called that's called a negligence. And if you're negligent, you can't rely on the Rabbi's Erev Tavshilin." So that's an interesting.
You have to make the Erev Tavshilin in your property or on your property.
But it's
as opposed to or what's the other? I'm not sure. Or
if you go across, so you're making one with somebody else.
no, you make it from your own food in your own house. Yeah.
But is negligence is that enough? You have no, not negligence. I'm saying if a person had no choice, like they forgot whatever, that would be enough. Don't they have to also be ignorant?
No, so if a person forgot because he was tarot, so then because he was preoccupied, then he can rely on the rabbi. But if it was his lack of concern, again, it's like, where do you draw the line? One of the clear drawn lines, which actually it's interesting, the Alter Rebbe doesn't mention it here in Tov Kuf Chav Zayin, but it's mentioned elsewhere in the Kunter Zachen and Hilchos Shchita, that if you do twice in a row, if you forget once, they're going to tell you, okay, you were preoccupied, now you can't rely on you could rely on the rabbis after Tavshilin. But if you get twice in a row, it's if you forget twice. Now, what does it mean if you forget twice? So some people there are some poskim I think who say twice. Like if you ever rely on the rabbi, that's it for the rest of your life. I don't think that's the normative approach. The normative approach is twice in a row. But twice in a row means 2 Friday Yomim Tovim in a row. So there could be a year and a half apart. Happens to be that now we have 2 close by Erev Tavshilin because we had it on Pesach, we're having it again on Shavuos, and again in Tishrei you often have it 3 times. But you could just as well have a year and a half or more with no Erev Tavshilin as we had before this past Pesach. So if you forget twice in a row, then the second time we say, you know what? How's it go? Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me, shame on me. Fool me once, shame. How's it go? Right. So twice in a row, you can't rely on the rabbi anymore.
Is it the man's obligation to make the Erev Tavshilin?
No, it's the obligation of the household. Usually, in practice, usually it's the man who does it because, but whatever. For the,
Well, that's why
They
almanos
can
don't know
switch.
about
I
it.
mean,
What?
Couldn't be the woman, one.
I'm not aware of any specific.
Man, another, or what?
Almanos.
That, I mean, yes, I don't know that really makes any. I mean, in practice, I think usually the man does it. I don't know if there's any specific reason for that. It would be a little bit strange to me to have the wife do. Why is the wife? The husband's not capable. Obviously, if a woman is single, then she has to do it. Whether she's just single, or she's divorced or widowed, whatever it is. Yes.
I have a question. Then, if no one would know about it, then it would be an issue.
Exactly.
Why even have it to begin with? Because if they never even made it to begin with, then that would mean everyone.
Because even though ignorance is bliss, what's even more bliss is doing Hashem's mitzvahs.
That's true. That's true.
Okay, now let's move on.
What happens if you forget to eat?
No, there's no obligation to eat the Eiruv Tavshilin on Shabbos. It's a custom to do something. There's no obligation to eat it. Now, okay. Now I'm going to go through a few other things. Okay, what I would like to do now is go through some other practical halachas of Eiruv Tavshilin, not Al Seder HaShulchan Aruch, not in the order that the Rebbe brings it. And then, if there's time, at the end, I'll talk a little bit about what to do in practice if you do not make it Eiruv Tavshilin, etc. And also, of course, come back to our story, which we opened up with, of the person who was going to their mother-in-law for Yom Tov and changed his mind. Yes? You want to ask?
No, I
Okay. Now, so, an interesting shaila, we mentioned that the mechanism of Eiruv Tavshilin is such that if you have a theoretical opportunity to eat it today, but so then it's downgraded from a biblical to a rabbinic prohibition, and therefore the Eiruv Tavshilin kicks in and it becomes permissible. So what about, for example, in Israel, where if the seventh day of Pesach, which in Israel is the last day of Pesach, falls on Friday, so Shabbos is not Pesach anymore. In theory, you could have chametz, but in practice, you can't have chametz because where are you going to buy your chametz from, right? Yom Tov goes straight into Shabbos. So, what about kitnius? Are you allowed to cook kitnius on Friday? There's no prohibition to own kitnius on Pesach. So, are you allowed to buy rice before Pesach in Israel and cook it on Friday of Shvi Shel Pesach, and then you could at least, even though you can't have chametz on Shabbos, at least you'll be able to have kitnius. So the question is, but nobody eats kitnius, so you're not allowed to eat kitnius on Pesach. So, is there a theoretical permissibility to eat it on Yom Tov? That's something that the Paskim discuss. And
Sfardim might show up.
Oh, so Ari's pointing out that what if there's Sfardim do eat kitnius, and what if you live in Poland where there are no Sfardim? So, right, so okay, how theoretical does that have to be? So that's one shaila. Again, we're not going to get into it, I'm just pointing out the shaila. And a similar shaila is asked amongst chassidim, what about cooking gebraks? We eat gebraks on the last day of Pesach, we don't eat gebraks on the seventh day of Pesach, so can you cook? Because somebody who's not a chassid, heaven forbid, might show up, so there is the theoretical, anyway, okay. Now, let's talk a little bit. Okay, we touched upon this before, I just want to clarify it. If somebody is not planning to do any preparations for Shabbos and Yom Tov, but they need to they need to light candles, right? So that's already considered. There is some discussion about whether or not you can make an Eiruv Tavshilin just for lighting candles, or with a bracha or not. And so if all a person is planning to do is lighting candles, in practice, what I would say is, ideally, change your mind and make sure that you are going to do something that actually requires an Eiruv Tavshilin, and then say an Eiruv Tavshilin with a bracha. Otherwise, I would say, okay, say an Eiruv Tavshilin without the bracha, which, like I said, you don't say the bracha, but obviously you do say the B'denya Hishara declaration. Now here...
How does an Eiruv Tavshilin help for lighting candles? I mean, l'chora, you don't have any use for it on Yom Tov itself.
Moira de Kikasha. In fact, Rabbi Marinelli, the whole purpose of Eiruv Tavshilin, the whole mechanism of Eiruv Tavshilin, is that you have already a theoretical possibility of using it on Yom Tov. Candles, you don't need the candles until it's nighttime. What benefit are you having from the candles during the daytime? Now, Once upon a time where they didn't have electric light. Let's backtrack a second. Forget about Yom Tov, forget about Erev Tavshilin. On a regular Friday night, what are you doing lighting candles for? You have electric lights. The whole mitzvah of candle lighting seems to be obsolete. So why do we still do the candle lighting? So that's a big topic, but the bottom line is, and this is a little bit based, the Alter Rebbe mentions this in Siman Reish Samach Gimel, section 263, number 14, that in addition to regular lights, whatever lighting you have, when you have extra candles at your on your dinner table, or I think even if it's the same room, like some people light the candles on a stand next to the dinner table, that enhances your Suda. It's actually interesting. A few weeks ago, we had a number of people over for Shabbos who were lighting candles in my house, and when I came into the room on Friday night, and Baruch Hashem, we have enough LED bulbs with plenty of brightness, and it's not dark in the room by any measure. But I walked into the room, and in a second, it struck me, I was surprised at myself that I actually noticed that the fact that there was instead of whatever candles, the number of candles my wife lights, there was an extra 5 or 10 candles over there. I noticed it. So there is. So what we're saying is that extra little bit of light, even though it's not really significant in its own right, but it is significant in terms of if it's in the location where you're having your meal. Now, by the way, this actually has a relevance to Yom Kippur, because when you're lighting candles on Yom Kippur, so obviously you're not eating by the candles. So now it's not good enough that it's just an extra little bit of light. It has to be significant light. So what are you lighting candles for on Yom Kippur? So the two best dates on Yom Kippur are either taka to leave the light off or at least dimmed in the room where you're lighting the candles, and so the candles actually have a practical difference. An alternative thing is, and this is especially useful for married people, because if you're married on Yom Kippur, you have to have a light on in your bedroom. So you could kill 2 birds with one stone, and instead of lighting your Yom Kippur candles where in your usual candle lighting spot, you could light them in the bedroom, and then if they're candles that last enough time to last through at least the beginning of the night or whatever it is, so then you have your light in the room as well. That's another.
You have to have a
option.
light in your bedroom?
Yes. On Yom Kippur you have to have some sort of, doesn't have to be bright light, but there has to be some light in the bedroom on Yom Kippur night if you are married. Now,
Does that mean you have to create the light?
yes, the reason is because it should remember No, you're supposed to have a light. Then the reason is because it's going to serve as a reminder, so that the husband and wife don't have relations, which is of course forbidden in Yom Kippur. Okay, now, let's go back to.
To remind the argument.
Yeah, well, it's based on the fact that al pi halacha, when a husband and wife are intimate, it's supposed to be completely dark. Now, in practice, exactly how to implement that and how 100% dark it has to be is certainly beyond the scope of today's class. But the idea is that if you have a light in your room, that if you have a light that you usually don't have there, or whatever it is, a lamp, so some people like to designate a candle there. Okay, let's not get too sidetracked. So when you're lighting a candle on Yom Tov for Shabbos, so back in the day before you had electric lights, when are you lighting the candle? You're lighting a candle, it's already starting to get dark perhaps, and so it's already, you have maybe a little bit of light coming in from the window, but your candle is going to add some quantity of light. It's going to make a difference. But nowadays it becomes very difficult to understand. You need to have at least a theoretical benefit from these candles on Yom Tov. What benefit can you have? I didn't see this discussed so much. A little bit it's discussed in a little bit. Perhaps you could say a simple balbatish teretz that you could always, if you have a room in your house where the light is off, so you could always say, oh, whoops, I need to go and get something from my garage. And now you could carry the candle with you and go and check your garage and you'll have light over there. Okay, whatever the case is. However, this leads into a much more fundamental issue, which is very practically relevant. And that is that, as we mentioned at the outset, Eiruv Tavshilin only helps for food-related preparation. Right? So if you're eating your Friday night meal at home, so you're lighting your candles, and they're going to be enhancing your Shabbos meal. But if you're eating out on Friday night, how can you light candles at home? It's not food-related preparation. And again, here, according to those poskim who don't follow the Alter Rebbe, there may be numerous ways to justify this. Some poskim hold that you don't need an Erev Tavshilin at all for candle lighting, and that, by the way, may also be based on the difference between the two reasons, Rava and Ravashi, because if you hold the reason is that you should remember. Okay, I saw some Achronim want to say that it depends on Rabbi and Rashi. We won't get into it exactly right now. But the bottom line is that according to Alter Rebbe, certainly you have a problem. If you're eating out Friday night, so what are you going to do? You're going to go to your host's house an hour and a half before the meal and light your candle over there? They don't want you there hanging out for an hour and a half. You're going to light candles at home? You're not eating at home. So l'chayra, the best option is to eat at home. In other words, either to light candles and then make kiddush and eat something by your own candle and then make a bracha achrona and go to your host, or light candles that are going to last many hours so that when you come home from your host, you can sit down and have a little bite by the candles. Again, these are a little bit strange ideas somewhat, and if somebody doesn't do that, would I say that no, they're not allowed to light candles? I don't think so, but this remains a little bit of a difficulty about what to do with lighting candles for somebody who's not planning to eat at home on Friday night. Okay, so now let's go back to where we started out from. So we have the Shiloh. The person was going to his mother-in-law. One second, before this. We mentioned already that every household needs to have an Erev Tavshilin. Now this is often something that people overlook, and that is people, for example, people who are single and they may live on their own, but they're used to eating out Shabbos or Yom Tov meals, so it may not even occur to them, but no, you have your own obligation to make an Erev Tavshilin, you're your own household. Now one of the areas where this gets very often overlooked, and I've been looking into this a little bit, is yeshiva bachrim. Now, different yeshivas have different setups, but often, whoever the cook is in the yeshiva might not even be stepping foot into yeshiva on Yom Tov. He prepares all the food beforehand, and whoever is in the yeshiva might have the job of putting the cholent on the fire or not, but certainly you often have the bachrim doing some type of preparation, and even if they're not cooking, they might be doing other types of preparation from Yom Tov to Shabbos. And as we said before, even if they're not doing anything for Shabbos, the yeshiva bachrim are their own household. They're not the members of the household of their parents who live thousands or hundreds of miles away. They're the yeshiva dormitory, that is a household. So how do they have an Erev Tavshilin? So maybe I saw Taka and some Achronim the Taka point out that yes, indeed, it is the responsibility of some of the bachrim or the menahal of the yeshiva to explicitly make an Erev Tavshilin for the yeshiva bachrim themselves. Alternatively, you could say that, as ironic as this might sound, that yeshiva bachrim are the ultimate ignoramuses, and in that it doesn't even occur to yeshiva bachrim that Erev Tavshilin, like that's for married people. Like which yeshiva bachrim ever thought about making an Erev Tavshilin? And so that because they're so ignorant, so therefore they have the ignorance is bliss of relying on the rabbi's Erev Tavshilin. Okay, I'm not going to get too sidetracked.
They're accustomed to being taken care of.
Exactly, and so that we're not going to get too much into that, but it is important for each individual to make their Erev Tavshilin. Now, an exception is if you're going away for Yom Tov, if you're going to your children for Yom Tov, or your children are coming to you for Yom Tov, so they're not guests. They're samuch al shulchanai. They become members of your household for the duration of Yom Tov, and therefore they're included in your Erev Tavshilin. Although some people say that even then you should actually explicitly include them, and like you do, you should give them, as you have your adult child coming to you for Erev Tavshilin. So in addition to giving it to him as an agent of all the other people in the city, if that's your custom, whatever the case is, explicitly give your child to make a kinyan, and you're being his shliach to make an Erev Tavshilin for him as well. That some poskim say that's even better because for various reasons. Now, let's go back to where we started out from. This person said he was going to his mother-in-law for Yom Tov, then he changed his mind. So here there's a few problems. First of all, the fact that he didn't make an Erev Tavshilin was a mistake, because even if he had kept to his plans, and Taka being eaten all the meals at his mother-in-law's home, he wasn't samuch al shulchan. No, he was living in his own house. He had his own kitchen. He wakes up in the morning and has his own coffee and cake in his own kitchen and his own home. And as you see, when he changed his mind, he didn't take food from his mother-in-law necessarily. Maybe he took some food from there, but he came home and he made a Shabbos, right? So he was quote unquote he was wrong for not making an Erev Tavshilin just because he was going to his mother-in-law. And here there comes the difference of whether or not you're a Talmud Chacham. And the Alter Rebbe spells this out, that if you're capable of learning halacha yourself, so that you should have known better. So then you can't rely on the rabbi, because that's considered negligence, that you didn't learn better. If you're more of a sort of simpleton and you just do what you're told, you don't think about it, whatever, so then we will say, okay, you could rely on the rabbi. So here it's a little bit of a gray area. On the one hand, he should have known better. On the other hand, maybe he said, I wasn't planning to do anything, so I didn't need an Eiruv Tavshilin, but then we say that even then we really paskin you should make an Eiruv Tavshilin, at least without a bracha. So that's a little bit of a gray area of was it okay for him not to have made an Eiruv Tavshilin, and can he rely on the rabbi, whatever it is. Now then there's another svara, another point, and that is he changed his mind. Let's say he didn't need to make an Eiruv Tavshilin beforehand because he wasn't planning to do anything. Now he changed his mind. So there is an argument to say, and some achronim say this, that why did you change your mind? If you changed your mind because an unforeseeable circumstance came up and now you're sort of stuck in this situation where you have to go home for Shabbos, so now you're an anus because you're stuck without an Eiruv Tavshilin, and so you could rely on the rabbi. But if you just, whatever, you know what, I'm not in the mood anymore, I just prefer to go home, I need some peace and quiet. So now, so you're sort of actively putting yourself in a situation with no Eiruv Tavshilin. So that's like, imagine a guy says, I'm hungry, I'm going to eat my Eiruv Tavshilin now. Well, if you eat Eiruv Tavshilin and your Eiruv Tavshilin is no longer, then you can't cook. You can only cook or bake for Yom Tov, for Shabbos, as long as the Eiruv Tavshilin is in existence, which, by the way, that's important. If you're making an egg or whatever it is for Eiruv Tavshilin and you put it in the fridge, make sure you mark it clearly Eiruv Tavshilin, so nobody by mistake eats it for breakfast. So anyway, I'm not going to paskin definitively on that particular case. Whether or not he could have relied on the rabbi. Now, should finish off very, very bekitzer, and that is, in practice, what if somebody actually doesn't have an Eiruv Tavshilin, and he can't rely on the rabbi, either because he was negligent, or he's a shliach in Yehupitz, and there is no other rabbi in the city making an Eiruv Tavshilin. So, essentially, the bottom line is, again, hopefully this shouldn't be relevant in practice, and if it is, you'll come and discuss it. But the bottom line is that if somebody himself, in order to be allowed to cook an Eiruv Tavshilin, you need two things. First of all, you need that you yourself or your household has made an Eiruv Tavshilin, and that the food that you're cooking or the candle that you're lighting, whatever it is, belongs to a person who has made an Eiruv Tavshilin. And so if somebody doesn't make an Eiruv Tavshilin, what they need to do is they need to get over a friend to come to their house who has made an Eiruv Tavshilin, and then they say, all of this chicken that I'm about to put in the oven, here it's yours, and he makes a kinyan and an acquisition, and it belongs to that person. And then he sticks it in the oven for you. So both the person who is actually doing the cooking and the person to whom the food belongs has made an Eiruv Tavshilin. And that would be sort of the way to go about it, which is, of course, very inconvenient, but usually doable. The one exception is candle lighting, and that Chazal say that if you didn't make an Eiruv Tavshilin, you're allowed to prepare the bare minimum food that you need to survive, so to speak, on Yom Tov, which in today's society is probably nothing, because most people have in their fridge something that they're not going to starve. And also, you're allowed to light one candle. Which again is questionable whether the heter to light one candle applies nowadays, that we don't actually really, quote unquote, need the candle. And so the bottom line is that now that nobody over here is ignorant anymore, so everybody should remember to make an Eiruv Tavshilin and an Erev Yom Tov, and even if you're not planning, even if you're living alone and you're your own household by yourself, so you should, and you're planning to eat out the meal, still you should make an Erev Tavshilin at the very least without a bracha, or if possible with a bracha, and make sure to do something on behalf of Yom Tov to Shabbos. But if you are a member of somebody else's household, like Amitai, so you're living in that house and you eat your meals, you're part of that household, so you don't need to make your own Eiruv Tavshilin because you're included in the Eiruv Tavshilin of the household. Any questions before we close?
What happens if you're by yourself but can't get anyone else to come over? Can you make an Eiruv Tavshilin by yourself?
Yeah, so then you just skip the part. If you skip the part of the first thing that I hereby grant share and everything, and also in the B'dei Yeshara text you would skip the last few words, which means unto all the Jews in this city. Yeah, but even if you can't get somebody else to come over, you could do it with your wife or with your adult child.
Well, I'm saying if
but if your mom says then you don't need to. There's certainly no obligation to do that part. Any other questions?
The Shulchan Aruch brings down two different opinions
About
Shabbos candles without an Erev Tavshilin.
Yes.
He doesn't seem to imply that you should only do one. He just says he says it's mutter.
According to the Shitta that it's mutter, then you don't need an Erev Tavshilin at all. Certainly, if I understand correctly, the Ashkenazi Pesach that you do, certainly Alter Rebbe says that you do need Erev Tavshilin. I don't remember offhand where the Mishnah Berurah falls exactly in this. I think he probably says, without the bracha.
He says one. He said.
No, the Alter Rebbe also brings the din that if you have no Erev Tavshilin, you could light one without an Erev Tavshilin. That's the halacha. All poskim agree. The question is that true nowadays where we have electric lights? Is the reason they allowed you to have one candle is because that's considered a bare minimum necessity.
Right.
The question is, does that bare minimum necessity argument still hold water nowadays that we have electricity? That you have electric lights?
Yeah. Interesting question. So potentially today.
Again, you always have the other eight. So you have the eight of calling over somebody else and giving them the candle to belong to them, and then they could light it for you.
Right. The Mishnah Berurah gives that advice as a
It's
second.
not- yeah,
Right. He brings down one is just light one, and the other is maknet.
Yeah.
He says maknet to your neighbor.
Yeah, but the neighbor has to light it.
I don't think he spells that out, but I guess maybe
Yeah.
that's by implication. That's what he's saying.
Yeah.